Dak Prescott's injury will shake the dynasty outlook here for Dallas, as well as the NFC East, and for the corresponding weapons here. That and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. Jordan, we got Dak Prescott out. Could be a couple months. Jerry Jones thinks it's going to be half that. But we saw a Dallas team that really struggled. Tampa Bay is a good defense. We know that. But a team that could only muster 3 points. Now it's going to be Cooper Rush, and we may even see Will Grier by the end of this thing.
It was definitely a bad week one. And I remember it was so good last year, week one, when they basically just threw it all over the place and actually played a pretty surprising game week one against Tampa. Now we get another Dak heartbreak, really. This isn't great. It was bad with Lamb. Like, it just was a really bad situation altogether. I think there's a ton of uncertainty, I think, with the Dak Prescott situation. He had this surgery on his thumb, on Monday. Dr. Gene, you can go by his injury rounds, is amongst the best stuff that we do at Football Guys. And I'm talking about stuff that both you and I do too. So I know I can't get to the Dr. Gene's level. I'm still working on it. But early recovery estimates 6 to 8 weeks was Sunday night. Come Monday, right? Mike McCarthy confirmed surgery, and that the recovery timetable will be understood after the surgery. And then Jerry Jones came out and said that we want his quote was, "We want him to be a consideration for playing for us within the next 4 games." When you actually delve into it a little bit more, it seems a little optimistic, a little pie in the sky. If we thought he wasn't going to be ready until after 4 games, we would put him on IR. We're not doing that. We think he can come in and play, so we don't want to have him not out there practicing. We want him getting prepared, and we'll see how he handles this thing, how it heals, mainly his strength, how he can grip the ball. Dr. Gene followed up with an update and says, the fracture may actually be considered heal sooner than 6 to 8 weeks, but it's going to be a hard time to have NFL caliber accuracy and velocity. So, I'm leaning on this is going to be a 2-month injury. And if we get anything better than that, I think, we'll sort of see. I think the question that we have for Dynasty, and this is honestly coming in, I'm thinking about Russell Wilson last year struggling to get back. That was the initial thing when I heard them thinking about rushing Dak back. So that's the one thing I don't want them to rush and do, and then him to be ineffective. But I think with Dynasty, you really have to think about the direction of your team. I've got some Dak Deshaun Watson teams where I'm just kind of looking at quarterback, and I'm like, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to make this work other than to have to go out and really trade for somebody. I don't know how good of a solution Cooper Rush is going to be in that offense, right? I'm kind of staring at the abyss a little bit in some of these leagues. So I'm trying to get really creative, and we'll talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think a few other ancillary points of what we saw from Dallas, and 1 game sample size, of course. So you throw that into, sometimes that's going to be exactly what predicts the next, few months, and then it's going to be signs of things to come. Otherwise, it's going to be a 1-game blip of some teams ready, some teams not, matchups, all that. And I think the Rams, are a case of, we're probably going to see much better things and immediately good match. You get a good matchup the following week. But with Dallas, I think what's going to be washed over, and everyone talking about how the offense just generally wasn't good, is we saw a healthy Ezekiel Elliott. Now, that may not come to fruition of he's a top 8 guy over the next couple months with no Dak Prescott, but we saw a vibrant guy that was not dealing and playing through injuries like he was a year ago. We even did see Tony Pollard on the field a little more this season and in week 1. And then we saw CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to be a really interesting litmus test. We've talked about him a lot over the last 12 plus months. That is he going to be one that can survive and thrive when he's the guy? And Michael Gallup coming back might be key, but he's still a little ways off. And Dak Prescott's on the shelf for probably a couple months. So I think CeeDee Lamb, and everyone expecting him to be, wide receiver 3, 4, 5, 6 in Dynasty, he's not going to produce like that. That's just going to be really tough stuff with Cooper Rush and the state of affairs. So I wonder what his market is. It going to cool to a more reasonable, balanced level in Dynasty, because now we're in production season. And I also wonder if Dak Prescott, are we going to get a window? And obviously in a month, he's going to be closer to returning, and it may not exist, but are you going to be able to get like QB 10, 11, 12 prices? Like, are we going to get that much of a discount, or is it going to be more of just 2, 3, 4 spots? Like someone offered me Russell Wilson straight up for Dak Prescott, or I think it was backwards. Actually, they were trying to send Dak Prescott for Russell Wilson. And so obviously Wilson went later by a few quarterback spots in a startup draft. But, I think people are working on the edges there. And there's some people that think, the Cowboys might go completely in the tank this season, and who knows what that means long term and all these big macro things. Unlikely, in my opinion, but I do think there's big ramifications for CeeDee Lamb, for Dalton Schultz's upside per se, and just the overall, Zeke might be a running back 2 for lineup decisions, in future weeks. So some shading there within what you thought your lineup hierarchy was going to be.
Yeah, and I think how does CeeDee Lamb as a worse version of DJ Moore feel to you? Like,
right, DJ Moore is trapped.
What's that?
DJ Moore is trapped right now. Good player, and we feel, that ceiling. What would the ceiling be like somewhere else?
Yeah, and I mean, you look at his first 4 years, wide receiver 36, 15, 25, 17 in terms of seasonal finishes. We're kind of in like a similar type of track with Lamb, right? I mean, he was 24 as a rookie, and then last year he was 19, and now he's sort of getting into that spot where he's being valued as a top 5 guy. I don't see how that pays off this year.
Is it kind of like Amari Cooper? Like when he started his career?
That's a good one too.
Well, we're still kind of wondering, is he going to get all the way home? He's had pockets of seasons, but he's never really put that top 5, top 8 finish, when sometimes he has been ranked there during his career. And I always find that interesting when a wide receiver, they've been around for a little bit and they still haven't actually had a season close to where they're valued, which I always find interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's a lesson that we learn. But like it's that arc. It's the Cooper, it's the DJ Moore arc where after a year or maybe 2 years, we like what we see on the field or in the numbers, but it's a middling wide receiver 2 type finish, and we put him at wide receiver 4 or 5 in Dynasty. And the harsh reality, or the new reality, to steal the phrase, is that that's really tough to go. Like that's a huge jump to make, right? It's a lot. It's not that hard to go from 30 to 15. It's really hard to go from 15 to 5. And I think
right.
that's
to
one
pull,
of the things
to pull the Deebo Samuel.
Correct. And
pull the Cooper Cup.
Yeah. And Deebo Samuel's he's one of the most efficient wide receivers. Like, and that's the I think the difference between a guy like AJ Brown and Lamb, which is that, AJ Brown's the most productive wide receiver on a route run basis. I mean, him and Justin Jefferson basically through their careers are at the top. It's them and Julio Jones, right? I mean, that's the level of which he is. Lamb isn't there yet. And if you sort of are starting to run into all these, if you start running into all these potholes along the way, it can be really, really, it can be harsh to spend a top 5 wide receiver pick on a guy that never truly gets home. And I worry about that with Lamb. I've worried about that for a while with Lamb, and this is not going to help him at all.
What would be your action plan if you had Dak Prescott and maybe one other starting quarterback in the NFL? You mentioned some people might have Dak and Prescott stacks from somewhere in that round 1, round 2 blend of a startup draft, or just through acquisitions and trading. It's one game in. So this is a small sample size to turn the page, to say that this is not my year. What would be your action plan in terms of, I need to replace Dak Prescott? Is Cooper Rush, more aggressive bidding, something you would do? Would you go after a Jared Goff or something in a trade? Go, QB 20 plus, see who's cheap across trading. What would be your hierarchy of, here's plan A, here's plan B? If you couldn't get that done, you start one quarterback and you stack a few backups with roster spots. What would be the plan there?
Yeah, I think I have to have a realistic outlook on this. I think let's plan on kind of seeing how this thing goes. I wouldn't cut bait yet on the season, right? I would try and play it out and just see where it goes. So tanking wouldn't be what I would do. I would probably go over to the website. If you're a subscriber, I'd use the League Dominator, and I'd look at get a realistic expectation of sort of where you are. And I would think, hey, listen, if I'm sort of a middle of the pack team, maybe I can tread water, and maybe he comes back sooner than we think, or maybe it opens up another window that I can't necessarily expect right now. But listen, I can stream guys, right? I could bid aggressively on Cooper Rush. That's probably what I would do. Heck, maybe Flacco's out there. I mean, he threw the ball a ton and wasn't terrible. So we can maybe plug a hole here or there for a week. And so I'd try that. And then other options might open, right? So I wouldn't panic. Other options might open. Maybe the Brady GM starts slow. And, Brady wasn't a reason you probably won in week 1. Maybe they start 0-2. And maybe they're in a position where they want to deal him away. That would be a situation. I would approach the guy or gal that has Derek Carr right now and see if a deal can be struck there. I would give a future first and just see what happens with that, because I think that pays for itself long term. That would be a situation that I would do. Kirk Cousins, similar thing. Like, I think that's a potential solution. You could go a little bit further down the line. I mean, Jameis Winston, I mean, this thing could turn really well. I mean, it's like we're throwing it back 5 years with Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. Like, this is fantastic. He's a guy that I think could be interested, and maybe if you can pull less on a future first, someone's trying to sell high, something like that. I think that there's a lot of those types of deals. I wouldn't panic, and I wouldn't overthrow my team, but realize, like, hey, you might have to go a week and stream somebody. Like, we might have to let it come to you and just try and figure it out here or there. And listen, maybe you get a spot start out of Jeff Wilson, and he's your super flex guy this week. Like, there's worse options. Heck, maybe it's Rex Burkhead, the starting running back for Houston that you got in the 27th round of a startup draft. Like, those things are all possible, and I wouldn't rule them out.
Yeah, I think, and also 2 things. Number 1, not flexing a quarterback in a particular week is not a death knell. It doesn't mean you are going to lose. We saw plenty of weak quarterback production that if you had them in your super flex spot, they probably didn't help you. And you probably would have been better off starting somebody else. So the single digit scoring is pretty common, for quarterbacks on a weekly basis. So to pretend like you're going to be way far behind. And then the other thing is, so let's say you do spend big on Cooper Rush. There is the distinct possibility he's putting up some scores that you would have better options from your other skill position flex players. So the single digit, just because, and again, Footballguys has a pretty decent projection on Cooper Rush for this week. I think it's depending on scoring, like 17 to 20, something like that. So that's decent, but there's a possibility he scores 8 or 4 or 11, and it's just really not a big deal. So I would be careful. Like, I would not personally be super aggressive. I've called it a price enforcing. And I would say if you quote unquote need quarterback or lost Dak or some other circumstance different than, I'm just in on the bidding, because I don't want to give somebody a freebie, you can go maybe price enforcing plus. But I don't personally.
Is 15-20% somewhere in the range that you
price
think?
Enforcing? Yeah. I think in somewhere in the maybe 25% would be the price enforcing plus, like that maybe you go up to. But if someone wants to spend 50% or 75% on a partial year on an offense that we saw looked bad, on a player that really doesn't have much of a sample size of playing in the NFL, one that apparently Dallas had so little allegiance, they're like, we'll cut you. It's like Oprah with cars. I mean, and you get a release and you get a release and we'll put you all back on the price. Like, they had no qualms losing Cooper Rush. And here he is the next week starting. I mean, doesn't that kind of tell you something? Usually you keep quarterbacks protected if you actually gave a care, is what I'll say. So they're kind of telling us, a little bit here and there. And so don't be surprised. So I don't know about you, but I can't validate. And if someone wants to jump in there with a big bid, let them. And if it works out for a couple months, so be it. But I don't think he's the type of quarterback to go big time. And like, this is my one big bid for the season. I personally couldn't do that or recommend it.
Yeah, I think that 15 to 25% is kind of what, like, as I was thinking about, it's kind of what I was thinking again.
It might get him, probably not.
Right. And if you want to go a little bit higher, I probably wouldn't go north of 50%. I wouldn't go that high. That's not where I would go, but somewhere in that quarter to a third, I think is fine. The other thing I was thinking too, like, I wouldn't necessarily write him off. I know, and like you said, you make the case that, hey, they like wanted to, like, they were fine releasing him. like there's been some other stuff where we've seen that happen, and contractually he's not subject to waivers, so they could sort of cut an agreement with him, like, hey, we're going to cut you and we're going to bring you back after cut downs, so that way we can make an IR move. Like we've seen that in other spots. So I don't necessarily, like, he could have just been being a good soldier on that too. So I wouldn't necessarily write that off. And he played well when he was good last year too. So
I just don't want people to remember that overtly positive big game he had.
Yes.
I believe it was last year, and think that he's on. We've seen, Mike White turn from Cinderella to 12:01 a.m. And so one big game, we need a bigger sample size was my biggest point. And if Dak Prescott was potentially going to struggle in this offense, what do you think Cooper Rush does? So he probably is functional. He's probably fine. And he's probably between those 2 points for a couple months, but we still don't even know if he holds that job, and he could have half the game single digits. I mean, all this is within play. And I think with your spending a significant portion of your capital in the waiver wire, I think you want to get a little more bang for your buck. And you could also spend dollar bids on any other backup in the NFL that's on the waiver wire as opposed to Rush this week. So be careful with spending, as we mentioned, the 50% plus type stuff.
Totally. Because guys like Tyrod, you know what I mean? You could sort of go just, I think you could do a lot of if you choose not to spend, you can do a lot of different things. And I think optimizing this, I did waivers of the future this week and I have some ideas in there as well. So
absolutely
take a look at that. One other thing, I have a question for you. Would you pursue shipping Prescott? Would you be in the sell market on Prescott? Specifically, like if you could get a Prescott for Wilson deal, if you could do a Prescott for Stafford deal, like is that stuff that interests you, or even Prescott plus for going up the board? If you had to put a first and attach it to Prescott to go up, how does that strike you if you're sort of a contending team?
I normally have like 3 starters, I would say generally, so I can probably weather the storm more than something that might be more attractive. And like, I kind of need to replace that. And I'm always the type of having that prism of it's not the whole year. It's part of the year. It could affect later in the year as well. But I'm always I'm not just going to trade a profile I like for the sake of it. So super selective. We talked about that a lot of times with all these trades we discuss on the show, is be super selective in what you want. And so if you were able to go up and it's up into the Herbert, range for, and you're adding a first, I mean, I was open to that before the injury, so I think that's where the line, turns into moving up. And then I think moving down or sideways, you got to be pretty careful. So yeah, I mean, my thought is usually to Band-Aid. And if that means trading for Winston or Goff or, Ryan on the cheap, you mentioned Brady might be available in a couple weeks or something like that, depending on the team dynamic. So I usually go those. And if you're 0-1, 1-0, whatever, see how the next 2 go, and maybe you do bid 33% on Cooper Rush. And that's I'm not going to make a huge move. I'm going to Band-Aid it. Let's see if I get to 2-2. How am I feeling? So I think that's how I would normally play it, like very inching along in terms of the process, and don't feel like I need to. Now, again, if I've hit on some stuff, and maybe Cordero Patterson, turns out to be someone that I wasn't planning on. Maybe I didn't even start him last week, and now I have excess at running back. Well, maybe now you're cooking with gas, and it's Prescott and something else for quarterback X. So that changes the dynamic if you have overt strength somewhere, and you can really do a luxury type move. And this is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 120 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I want to remind you to subscribe. Jordan mentioned the site is rolling out. We didn't have a lot of week 1. I would say probably about 25-30% of the weekly coverage and content is pre-week 1, leading up the weekly content. And so now this is the week, the fire hose that you're going to get a ton of content. And just a reminder, I mean, all of us authors have our own landing page, so you can see everything we've written. You can go search for Jordan, you can search for myself and find all that. Jordan mentioned taking over Dynasty waivers of the future. So that's going to have more of a lens towards what's really available in Dynasty leagues. And a lot of times that's different than in redraft leagues. So that's very key. We have a lot of Devy content over there if you're interested, some college roundtable stuff. So Football Guys is definitely trying new content. So maybe you kicked the tires a few years ago. It's different now. Dynasty has its own add-on membership. So that means hyper focused in terms of what we're going to provide beyond just rankings. So on a weekly basis, waivers, one thing that I'm going to probably reference, at least once a show is something about high leverage opportunities. That's something that I track. It's going to be a whole article this year on high leverage opportunity score for running backs, of course, new reality, and some other features like dynasty trading post. So you're going to be able to find this, and it comes with a money back guarantee. So try it out. I mean, you get to try it out for a few weeks, and then, is it helping my team or is it not, through the League Dominator and other ways to really connect your teams and get that power. So you want to go over to footballguys.com/dynasty winners.
It's time for the Stash of the Week, powered by Sleeper.
Here we go. Sleeper stash of the week. And Jordan and I were talking pre-show. Rex Burkhead, if you're taking the advice from this section, it was back in the preseason. Well, we saw a guy that had a huge market share of snaps. He was getting all the passing and receiving looks there in Houston for a team projected to not be very good. So Dameon Pierce was the flashy guy, but Rex Burkhead has already come through. Sammy Watkins last week, not so much. But you know what? Week 1 is the best time to take a shot on Sammy Watkins. So we came up, this is kind of a dual contribution here. Juwan Johnson. Both of us look heavily in terms of opportunity and utilization. So when you look at routes, which is a huge thing. If you look at snaps, that's great. But you know what? If you look at a guy like K. Dotton or some of these blocking centric guys, if they're blocking 80-90% of the time, we honestly don't care.
Right.
I mean, how many routes are you running? And so Juwan Johnson over Adam Troutman by such an extreme fashion was honestly one of the things that made me sit up when I was looking at all the wide receiver tight end stuff for the week, because I would not have expected this wide receiver convert who flashed every once in a while last season, but all the talk was Adam Troutman. This might be the year for him, but it's all Juwan Johnson when you look at the splits.
74% of snaps ahead of Adam Troutman. Notably, again, you mentioned this, and I think this is the super valuable stuff. 32 routes for Johnson compared to 4 for Troutman. I literally, it was one of those, you're just scrolling through spreadsheets, and you're like, well, you literally have like a physical reaction to what you're seeing. It was one of those situations. I'll tell you the other one too. Not quite as stash worthy as Tyler Conklin. And that was a situation we, like Uzama, weren't necessarily sure. It was like 5-1 in favor of Conklin to Uzama in terms of the receiving game usage there. And he played 92% of snaps. So a couple of guys there for tight end, if you're trying to figure it out, like you and I are in some leagues at tight end. Like those are a couple of guys I think definitely have some stashability.
Yeah, and both of those guys are probably going to go under the radar on the waiver wire because both teams have quality wide receiver cores. And so that tight end is going to be viewed as ancillary, just like Hayden Hurst, for example. It kind of gets brushed under the rug because they have good wide receivers. And I was surprised. I mean, you saw what Juwan Johnson was doing. He almost ran as many routes as Olave, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. When you say who's their best 5 or what 5 were most likely on the field out in routes for Jameis Winston on a given passing play, Juwan Johnson was one of them. So that's all you need to know. Winston can fill the box score. So yeah, Juwan Johnson is a guy that, like a baby quasi homeless, but he lives in a, mobile van or something. Darren Waller type profile, a guy that didn't make it as a wide receiver. He doesn't run 4.3, but he's athletic, especially for the tight end position if he didn't make it. And he's been developing for years now, working into this role, rangy. And again, this may not work out, but if you, after week 1, took a shot on somebody, guys like Conklin, guys like Juwan Johnson are what you need to take shots on. You don't want to take a lot. I mean, churn out the guy that didn't work out. You don't have good feelings about. Maybe he didn't run a lot of routes. So you need to look at all that stuff. Another good example is OJ Howard. Like the one thing I wanted to look at, the guy catches 2 touchdowns. And I was like, I'm not paying attention to how many routes. And frankly, they're all single digit jersey numbers these days. So it's really tough to keep track. I was like, how many routes is OJ Howard? He just got there. And sure enough, he barely ran like 10 to 12 routes.
Right.
And it's like, so either that needs to go way up or it was one of the fluky week 1 things that we see. And that's where you need to know the routes. You need to know.
It was 6. By the
There
way,
you go.
6.
Exactly. So that's where, see the forest for the trees. Like you really need to know, does it make sense? Because no one's going to stay that efficient over any sample size. And Jordan, of course, probably has a OJ Howard joke ready right now, because he, among anybody, would need as many routes as humanly possible to sustain the 2 touchdown per game pace that Rob Gronkowski did not even do for any season of his career.
The only thing I can rationalize with OJ Howard is that he wears like you've seen Anchorman, right? Where he's wearing the cologne, the Sex Panther, and everyone sort of runs away from him because it's got bits of real Panther. Like that's how people react to OJ Howard. They run away from him in coverage. It's incredible.
Exactly.
He's the king of
they're just covering everything else.
Coverages.
Yeah, there's like an Alabama stink about him. It's like reverse. All right, we got some good dynasty trades, and we actually are going to close with a Dak Prescott, and these are all from post week 1. So really good data points for your leagues, and we're going to debut a new segment where we're putting them out on Twitter. So we're going to play Guess the Market. So I don't have access to the results yet. I blindly posted them hours ago, and so Jordan and I will both take our guesses. What the market says, and then obviously evaluating what we think as well. So the first deal, we have 10-team Superflex. Gabriel Davis, who 100% of the snaps and routes, I believe. So he was in there. Game was over, but Gabriel Davis played a ton. Didn't get a ton of targets, but Gabriel Davis traded for a 23 first.
By the way, I dig Gabe Davis actually being the guy in Buffalo. I kind of like. I love it. I think it's terrific, especially in the lens of like when you look back and people were saying, "Oh, like it's going to be Jamison Crowder that comes in and takes his lunch." I say McKenzie, like it's all this. It was like, no, it was the guy that was dominant in the AFC playoffs. Like that's actually
Jordan. I didn't say that, but I said Khalil Shakir. So at least that was different. TBD on that. Maybe in 3 years that'll happen.
We'll see. But I mean, he's already. I mean, he led them in routes. Like, I mean, this is not at this point. Like, I think we have to.
Oh, he's out there. He is out there, right?
Yeah.
You want a guy running a lot of routes with a good quarterback that's not named Josh Palmer, and then you'll be just fine.
Right. Is maybe the next segment we should do is Gabe Davis, wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. Now, I would take the first, but I think that this is a proper recognition of the fact that Gabe Davis is becoming much more valuable, and I think that
much more predictive in lineups.
Correct.
For upside and sustainability.
Correct. And again, I think you look at a guy like Gabe Davis, and again, all of my inclination would be day 3 pick, like hasn't fully broken out for a full year yet. I think we've seen enough that we can sort of take him, not that he's in the Stephon Diggs or some of the other guys that truly hit range, but I think you move him way up above the base rate of a guy who's a day 3 pick that hasn't done anything yet, because he has, but he hasn't gotten fully home yet. But I do think you have to very much correct. And again, one thing we saw consistently over and over and over again, and I can't explain it, the dynasty market was behind the redraft market on a young wide receiver who was flashed. And I for reasons that I don't understand, that happened to Gabe Davis. And I don't think it's happened in dynasty history where you've seen a guy who's flashed through a couple of years be lower. And we've talked about CeeDee Lamb, right? Like everyone that's actually has flashed a little bit is always worth more in dynasty than in redraft. That was not true with Gabe Davis. And again, it's a week, we got to be careful, but even the usage stuff is pretty optimistic. That said, I'll take the first, but I think that like he should be more respected than he is. And this is the proper conversation to have him, because this is more about team building and sort of how you use that first and how you build out wide receivers than it is sort of poking fun at Gabe Davis, which a lot of people did over the summer.
So you will take the first. Now you have to predict the market. And by market, I mean people that retweet on Twitter and what you know from that general global paradigm.
80% of people took the first would be my guess.
Okay. I will go 75% taking the first, and that's the side I would be on as well. 10 team, I'll just add one more point. I mean, you have odds of having a higher pick than a 12 team there. So, and it being super flex, which we haven't mentioned, a lot of value in that pick, even if you like Gabe Davis. Results. And I didn't look at this. I think didn't I predict the number on the spot? Like, all right. So the result is 76%. Okay. So way off. I'm way off. on that on the result there. All right, next trade, and I actually do want to mention from the chat, we got League Dominator is great, makes the waivers a breeze. That's one of the biggest time periods of the week that I use it. That you pull it up, it syncs all of your leagues there, and you can it quickly highlights guys that would be relevant for your lineup for the given week. It shows everyone you have and how they're projected for the week. And yeah, you scroll right through. If you got 5 leagues, 100 leagues, it doesn't matter, and pretty seamless. So I have that one window up with the League Dominator, and I'm going through my leagues with the other one on Tuesday/Wednesday. All right, next deal we got here: 14 team, 1 quarterback, non PPR. So this is definitely unique for 2022. We had Jalen Hurts, white hot after week 1 for Mac Jones, Devonta Smith, and a 23 first.
Let's start with Devonta Smith for a second. He was good as a. How is he now? Like, where do we sort of put him now? Well, we put him kind of behind a dominant wide receiver 1, right? That's kind of
isn't he in that bucket of like Elijah Moore, a guy that showed well as a rookie, but will they take the step in year 2 or year 3 or ever towards that place that everyone wants to go?
I think Elijah Moore is drawing live for that, right? Like he's still a live bet. Like, you still have outs for him to actually be the wide receiver 1. There is, again, Devonta Smith was on a not a failure track as a rookie. AJ Brown being there changes his world in a way that it's very much like Allen Robinson, where you're going to be in a situation where you have a target hog volume guy on the other side of you, and it's going to be a lot of variance week to week. And if he's going to continue to sort of get high value, right, I think now's the time to move, right? Now's the time to move. I think selling sort of quote low on him right now is the proper play, because I don't think he's going to change your world. And I think that now we sort of see that what AJ Brown's capable of in this offense.
What world looks like if AJ Brown limps off.
Correct.
I mean, there's not many injury away wide receivers. I understand that, but his outlook will look far different.
It would. So,
I wouldn't go, selling him for wide receiver 45 prices or something.
I wouldn't either, but I don't think he's going to go there, right? Like, I don't think he moves terribly much, but I do think you have to appreciate the fact that, there's still a segment of the dynasty populace that will, look, young wide receiver, kind of like we just talked about with Gabe Davis, young wide receiver who, did something in year 1, going to value him really highly. It's just 1 week. I think that's the person that you probably try and engage in a trade for. Like, you sell him to that person.
I would imagine. I traded in the offseason, I traded Devonta Smith for Mike Evans, and it was generally straight across. I think I gave a slight plus on that, but I'm sure the other league mate was just like, oh yes, young cornerstone guy. And I was like, yes, I know, I have a guy who I know is an alpha, and if he gives me 1 or 2 of those seasons, you can have all the rest of the seasons. And if you hit, God bless you. Yeah. But I'm more confident that I kind of know my guy can carry the mail. And that was before AJ Brown and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing about you on this show, Jordan, is that I will read a quote or read a trade, and then you just go off on a tangent. You take a little rowboat and you're just like, you beeline east when it's like, we're going to the island. It's like 1 mile that way, straight due north. And you just like, oh, you said Devonta Smith. Do I have something for you? I'm glad you said that. And you know what? You wouldn't have said it during this show if it wasn't a trade, including Devonta Smith. You wouldn't have said it.
That's why we do the trade show. We got to talk about a lot of different players here, help out a lot of different folks, think about a lot of different things. So
after hours.
Yeah.
All right. So back to it. So this is a 1 quarterback, 14 team trade. What are your thoughts? Should you be throwing 3 things, including a first at Jalen Hurts?
In a 14-team league, it's an added value. I'd wonder where the first is. The answer is typically no, but like, I could be pitched to think that this is the right answer in a, if I'm a super contender, it's going to be a late pick in a start 1 league, right, where it's a 14-teamer. Like, the quarterback difference in a 14-team league versus a 12-team league is there is a difference there, and it does matter to have an elite quarterback. So I generally think that you could probably get quarterback cheaper than this would be my response.
Can you give
to this.
Devonta Smith? My first thought was, can you give Devonta Smith straight up
For
for
somebody.
a quarterback? Like if Mac Jones your starter,
Yes.
can't you figure something else out? Like go around the league.
Yeah.
Someone probably has 3 starters. Someone has Kirk Cousins. You can't trade Devonta Smith for Kirk Cousins.
Right.
I don't know. Like it just seems like a lot. Like what I always start with, what's the best I can do without giving that first?
Yeah.
What's the best? And then if that's not enough, let's circle back.
Yeah.
And if I include the first, I mean, I know Jalen Hurts might score really well, but I think I would want to do better.
He's got quarterback 1 in his range of outcomes.
No, I know. I just meant profile wise, like big picture. I would like to do better.
Yeah. I think he might be the best bet of anyone not named Mahomes, Herbert, or Josh Allen.
To finish SQB1.
Yeah.
You mean slight favorite over Trey Lance?
Do we have enough time? We have a hard limit of an hour.
I poked the bear. Yeah. And next up, we have a Trey Lance trade. All right. So now you have to predict the market. Predict the market on this one. What do you got?
85% taking the pick.
Ooh, 85. I'm going to go 82. I'm going to go under again just because I think there's a lot of people that like Hurts and they're going to do the 14 team and go, all right, here we go. Ooh, we were both wrong. 69%. So 31% like the Jalen Hurts side. That's a lot of recency right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is 1 week ago, we do the same trade. It's probably 60-something% the other way, right? Seeing one game out of the Eagles against the fighting Dan Campbells, all of a sudden everyone's on board.
Hey, remember there was the thing we talked about early on in the offseason, if there was one stat that would maybe define the season, how many dropbacks, what's the dropback pass rate for this team? 40, I have it at north of 40 times they drop back to pass this week. So
how many of those Hurts, 14 runs were scrambles?
A good chunk.
Yeah,
good
usually
chunk.
Most of them. Yeah,
it was a good chunk.
I don't want to miss it because it was in the chat, but we had someone shout out. I honestly would have forgotten about it, even though it was a while ago. But they said love seeing Chad on the Thursday night stream with Sigmund Bloom and Matt Waldman. So they're gonna have a rotating third chair. Jordan's gonna be on the show, I'm sure, at some point this year. Week. Yeah, there you go. So you're going to hear a lot of rotation, some new and some old football guys, staff names there on the Thursday night show, wrapping it with the old guard there with Sig and Matt. So it was a fun conversation. You can go back again. They're all on separate streams. So you got the Dynasty Show stream here, and then of course the Audible stream, and you can check that out. My appearance last week, we had some fun conversation. I will say, going on, it's always difficult because I'm used to hosting, and so there were like 2 or 3 fun moments where it's like I almost start turning it around where I'm hosting the show. It's like Kramer. It's like, and now I'm driving the bus, you know. So anyway, but that was the first time the 3 of us got to talk shop there on a live show.
My first appearance on that show was when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was picked by the Kansas City Chiefs.
You were on late in the draft show.
I was on, and we were like, holy.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, and the pick is not Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor.
Can you still imagine if Jonathan Taylor were on that team?
Or DK Metcalf? Oh, boy.
They would be unstoppable.
They are.
They are one Mecole Hardman and or Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick away from just being a super beast of a team. I mean, those guys would be on rookie deals, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
That just shows you the margin between the Chiefs give everybody a chance versus. And by the way, Patrick Mahomes still good.
Yes.
Tyreek Hill, yeah, he's good. But
right.
I think that guy's better.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes made some unbelievable throws. I think he'll be okay. He'll live. All right, third deal here. Superflex 1.5 for tight end. We've got Carson Wentz for Davis Mills, Robert Tonyan, and a 24-second.
I'm surprised it takes this much to get Wentz, was sort of my initial reaction. But I do think like deals like this, you're not like, think about the deal we just talked about where you had to give a first in a non Superflex league. In a Superflex league, you can give. I do think Wentz is a better starter than Davis Mills is. I've come around to being Team Wentz, right? The expectations have gone super low. I'm on Team Wentz now. Chad and I are both on Team Wentz. It's all an issue of cost, right? I think like
super
this
pumped.
is
I'm super pumped right now. We need to have Cecil clip that part of the show. Team Wentz, not Chad solo Wentz.
no
Team, we're a team here about
correct,
Carson Wentz.
correct. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's one
Sneaky
of those
decent.
things where
All you have to
it's
do is blink really long when he has his aneurysm moments. That's all you have to do, and then you look at the rest and you're like, this is a good quarterback.
Listen, he's the
Washington
guy
is fun. If you watch Washington week 1, it is so fun. That was a really fun offense and team to watch. Antonio Gibson, deep targets. He was anywhere and everywhere. Curtis Samuel, vibrant, like a little baby, thinner Debo Samuel. Yeah, I mean, just they're so fun and exciting. And then you put Jahan Dotson in there.
Yeah,
makes you forget about Terry McLaurin.
Yeah,
who got bailed out with a long touchdown. He was on his way to an absolute bust game.
Yeah.
And anyway, but just I hope they keep that up, because Washington with a good offense, they can rattle some cages in the NFC East now.
Yeah. Carson Wentz is the guy that, like, he had like some, like he's had some problems. Like, he's the person that, like, you know, got in a really bad car accident when they had a DWI, but like generally, like he's been defined
too inappropriate at the company Christmas party.
Absolutely.
Almost lost his job or came back.
Correct.
Did the George Costanza be like, "Oh, are you serious about that?"
Yes, like failed out of college, but ultimately graduated. You know what I mean? Like,
he's been back with his girlfriend 4 times, proposed twice, actually had a bachelor party.
Yes, it's been high profile failures, bad failures, but I actually think that, like, they have probably defined him too much. Would be my sort of take on it.
I think the market has overrated those moments and those failures, and they fail to realize he has, you know, something in him. He has near MVP level at his best in the NFL within him, and possibly taking a team near or to a Super Bowl, you know, earlier. And just so you have to take the good with the bad. And frankly, how many quarterbacks don't have that?
Well, especially when you're 28 in Dynasty. Right, like, I mean, like, that's what you're dealing with, right? Like, I mean,
I was going to ask you, who's more likely to be a starter week 1, 2023, Mills or Wentz? I mean, this trade would outline that it's Wentz, right? I mean,
I think the answer from a football perspective is yes. There's enough about Carson Wentz that everyone flames him on the way out the door that maybe he's just like the worst coworker you've ever had, and no one wants to deal with him. And like, I've had those, right, who, you know, their resume would be like, all right, this guy's not bad. And then you deal with them for, like, you know, a year and you're like, I hate this person. It seems to be a common occurrence with Carson Wentz. So that would just be my only thought. Again, every sort of numerical thing that I would say would be that Wentz is a 2023 starter more likely than Davis Mills. There's enough about him. There's enough difference about him that there's enough smoke around him that I think I'm a little bit less confident about that. But I will say this: I think he's much more likely to influence your fantasy outcome this season than Davis Mills is.
Predict the market. This is going to be the closest one yet.
So this is right. This is the one, because we're on the ship. Like, I wasn't a fan of Carson Wentz when he was the Titanic in port, but now that he's the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean, I can afford the seat.
Just to talk through this collaboratively.
50-50.
Really? Because I think it's going to be the Mills side. I think the Mills side is going to be tight, though. I'm going to go 54-46.
Right.
Mills side, and you went 50-50. Result? Oh, my God. Jordan, 78%. 78% Mills side.
Yeah.
That is some wins. Like, we are never going to forgive this guy. That's more than the Gabe Davis first side.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. We got one more here. And we got
Can I ask you a question? Do you do that deal if Wentz isn't a starter? Like, if you're not going to put Wentz in your starting lineup, do you do that deal? Or do you stay flexible with Wentz in the pick, or with Mills in the
24 pick? Seconds. See, Tanyan, I don't know. Is he for the long term? I like him. I think he's a sleeper. I think things could go well for him this year. And then Mills, I just don't have a lot of confidence. You know, so you're getting a second 2 years from now. I think you got to go, you know, Wentz plus something and get something better, would be my take. Even if you go Wentz plus for like a 23 first, I would do that instead of this.
But did that trade poll just tell us that the option is the easier thing to do is to do that with Davis Mills, right? Like that was that might be the lesson that we take from this deal is that maybe it's actually easier to do that from a Mills based perspective. And honestly, if you're trying to sell Mills, you might have a better market for someone that's not contending and they're trying to get younger than to sell them Carson Wentz. I think that would be the flip side of that data.
Quick quiz. Who's the backup in Houston behind Davis Mills? Just to give you an indicator on how much. No. Well, they might have signed him, but I don't think that's who the actual backup is.
Kyle Allen.
There you go. Good pull. So that just shows you there's not a lot of job pressure on Mills here. So he's pretty much going to get the year. Pretty much. I mean, there's not really a reason for them to take him out. All right, we got one more here. Superflex. Dak Prescott, and again, this is since the injury. Dak Prescott and Dameon Pierce for Jameis Winston and Josh Jacobs.
By the way, Jeff Driscoll took snaps for them this week too, by the way, just for
all right. Wildcat and 3rd down and 1 doesn't count.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we can love Josh Jacobs. This is so far and away Dak Prescott that like this is how you like.
And this is a pro Winston move. A room. This is we are huge on Winston.
All right. And don't like Dameon Pierce like the market does.
Almost at all. Like he doesn't even count. He doesn't even factor in here. We're looking through Dameon Pierce.
Right. Hey, by the way, we mentioned Dotson earlier on. You know who the favorite? I saw that he's actually the favorite to win Rookie of the Year on a website right now. And I'm like, talking about recency bias. Everyone in May was like, yeah, you can't take him because he can't help you this year. Now
he's got a lead. He's got a lead. Yeah, exactly. What if Washington's sneaky better? What if Terry McLaurin isn't a true number 1?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Ifs and buts.
This is Dak. This is like how dreams are made of Dak Prescott said.
Okay.
Talk about the shortest view in the room. Like
what's what's the split?
I don't know, 93%.
Are any polls 93%? You'd have to do like Jonathan Taylor for a second.
You're going to get 94%. Yeah.
In a Twitter poll.
I'm going to take 93%.
Okay. I'm going to go 85%.
Okay.
And we got 75-25.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, only 75-25.
No, these people can't be. That's not representative of Dak Prescott GMs at all.
Okay.
Like, there's no way. There's no way you offer that to someone that actually.
No, actually, I looked at the comments. Literally, all of them said I own Prescott, and I would take the other side easily. I'm just kidding. Because usually everyone loves to tweet context. That's usually how Twitter works. Everyone likes to explain themselves.
Yeah, but. Yeah, but.
All right. So there we go for the trades of the week here. Now time for the dumbest thing I did this week and rolling it back. We're kicking it old school because I have something fantasy related. And I've said before that you can have some formats where you can float kicker all the way. Like if you set your lineup early in the week, you can get all the way to Sunday at 12 something. And finally, you can assess your options. Maybe you make a little small trade to create a roster spot. Maybe you just, have more information over the 3 days. So came time, shallow 2 quarterback, and have to start a kicker to have an invalid lineup. And I dropped of everybody. And again, it's super shallow. I didn't really have a clean drop, was Cooper Rush. Yeah, just float a back up there for 24 hours. What could happen?
What could possibly happen?
What could happen? What finger could just explode off a man's body? So
it was Dak Prescott.
So I will be doing an enforcement bid. I don't expect to get him, but I'm sure I could be able to trade him for something as my QB 4 or 5 or whatever. And I was looking back at possible other options, and I think no good running backs to drop. I think the play was I think I had John Walford. So I would have had to have dropped him before Thursday because he locked. So it was kind of a tight, unique situation. But in the world of trying to save waiver dollars or having equity, not my best day. Usually I spend like an unhealthy 20 minutes in some of these leagues, like trying to trade players for like 4th to 3rds and stuff. It's not really productive.
You, more than any person that I know, have that down. I was literally playing you, and I think the only league that we play each other in. and it was 12:58, and I was sitting there watching, and I was like, Chad doesn't have a legal lineup.
No legal lineup, no kicker.
Lineup.
He's like, I'm gonna get this thing.
12:59 rolls around, and I'm literally watching to the minute. Like I'm like, I have the clock up, and I was like, there are seconds left, and it turns 1 o'clock. I hit refresh, and you were in there, and I got an email at 12:59 that you had submitted the waiver. That you submitted it, and I was like, wow.
You know, there's like a nuclear. You know, like the nuclear clock that's over in Colorado. I have the MFL clock. Like I actually have the second counter on the wall, so you can see how many seconds do I have.
And some good Wi-Fi speed.
I figured if you saw my lineup, you would have time to audible. You would have time to Omaha and change. So I can't give you the last chess move. It's how that moves. You know, I didn't even know our division of death got realigned.
No way! Did it really?
Yeah, I think now they do. In those formats, they realign or randomize it or do something on a yearly basis.
Huh.
So I think I'm out of there. I think you're with the other team that made the division of death. But
that's super exciting. Hey, look.
Yeah. So now
I won a week. I won the week. That's great.
Yeah, you did. You went 11-0 and are all play centric.
And all play.
All right.
$20 in my pocket.
Yep. Hey, one of these quotes from the Football Guys Dynasty Forum is for me. I have this idea. Tell me if, and you're always very, you're going to keep it real. Tell me if this is potentially forward thinking and smart or completely dumb. High odds that it's completely dumb, but every once in a while, an idea to prevent tanking. What if you finish in last and that manager is eliminated from the league and the new team obviously would get 101? So obviously it'd be valuable to get 102, but you're towing the, if you are trying to circumvent the system, but then who knows? You could be too close to the fire. So if you finish last, you're out.
Like you're relegated.
Yeah. Whatever. You're just gone.
I think it's a good idea. The only problem in practice, I think it can create some league stability. Can you fill that spot? Can it be someone reliable?
Well, they'd have 101. Well, I think the interesting dynamic would be if you're down in the standings, would you trade that pick? Like it might become very unbalanced because to stay in the league, you might need to trade future assets for middling or not optimal current production. It was the thing I was thinking of. So you're like, okay, so I'd love to have a high first, but if I finish last, I'm out of the league entirely. So I need to make sure I'm competitive. I think it would make the bottom half of the standings far more interesting than the top half in like the last month of the season. But there's flaws. There's certainly flaws with it. I think it would be interesting to see what happens. Like, how do people handle it when a month in you're in last? Are you just okay with it? You're like, it's like redraft. I'm gone. Okay, I get that.
Anyways, don't worry. I was leaving this league anyways.
You know what? I actually thought of what the rub would be because
you forfeit a year of
well, no, if you traded the pick away, then obviously the whole idea of filling it and the team gets the 101. What if every time you are in last, you can't trade your future first?
Oh, interesting.
If you are in the standings in last, you can't trade your future first.
Or you require them to pay ahead.
If they're going to, right.
Right.
But then they would get eliminated. So what is that?
Well, you keep the money.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. This is getting interesting.
Not only do you lose your league, you lose your money.
Exactly. Not just a hat rack, my friend.
Yes.
All right. Next one. I feel like I overpaid to get a piece of Travis Etienne. I'll get over it with time. What do you think? And the reason I brought this up is, what do you think about the concept of just overpaying? What if it's overpaying for what you think is fair, overpaying for what you think market deems fair? That if you have a feeling about a player, if they have a feeling about Travis Etienne right now, I want that player on my team, or my team needs this player or position or profile. What do you think about the concept? When is it okay to overpay?
It's okay to overpay for elite assets, right? Because they're the ones that are most stable long term. They're the ones that are most likely to be good. And if you miss, right, your miss typically isn't like a catastrophic miss. I think overpaying sort of in the middle of of the position. I mean, it depends what we're talking about, right? Are you paying, running back 8 for someone that's running back 15? Okay, like that's not that bad, right? Are you paying running back 5, right? Are you paying running back? Are you making him a top 3 guy, right? I think that stuff matters a bit. I don't like to. Right, I think the solution to this is playing enough leagues where you don't feel like you're obligated to overpay in one specific league to have one specific player. That's generally the solution that I would have.
Yeah, because you have a general exposure. You're not going to have 100% in 99% of cases. It's really difficult, usually off the waiver wire. Someone deep, but somehow applies to all of your league depths would be the way to do that. But yeah, I mean, you have some exposure to a lot of players. And I think I would say I've also seen an environment where, especially if it's like the easiest time is usually trading up in a startup draft to overpay, but it's still like realistic. And then you just draft the player. So I think that's the time where it's probably the easiest to execute. I find it interesting when somebody holds firm and they say a player is not available, or like basically like, this is my guy. You're not getting my guy from me in my dynasty league type stuff. And who knows, they might be in 1 league, they might be in 5 leagues. And it's really important to them. They have a certain player.
Right.
And that's where you just got to say, it's kind of like an auction. You got to say no. You have to have a price that they might ask for double, the typical price. And you have to be very, very careful about getting them at all costs during a negotiation. That would be the one thing I would say on the flip side of that.
It's a different version of paying too much for a player, right? Like if you're not willing to take anything for a player, you're actually you are in a way paying too much for that player.
Yeah. I've had a few of those over the past, this off season specifically, that someone will say, I like the players I like, I'm not looking to trade anybody away. And we got in this big conversation for the league where it's like, I'm not looking to trade. They basically just said that. It's like, that's an interesting idea, that you're just not looking to trade. Like I wouldn't like being in Dynasty if that was my mindset. Like there's plenty of redrafts that lock trading. You can't trade. Or maybe even there's high stakes Dynasty where they say no. I mean, I can't imagine though, no trading. But
tough.
It'd be interesting going into a league though. Everybody else is trading. You get offers. You don't send any back really, and you just kind of sit there. I don't know, like how you're kind of just okay or wired that's fine. That there's no exploitations that you can make into the marketplace. I find that interesting.
You're probably missing an opportunity. I think
of course.
The thing. You're missing an opportunity to do something. And again, you just look at some of the stuff that's happened here, right? You've bought low or you've sold high, right? Like you've actually taken bets that have massively.
You've just drafted so well. Like you drafted the exact players: startup draft, rookie draft, waiver wire. Just every player you've got, you have such a connection with. You scoured research, and this is the guy for this situation, and you get them, and you're happy with them. You want to hold them the long term. I mean, what a world that is, right?
It'd be amazing.
I am just happy with every single one of these.
I wish I was that good. I strive to be that good sometimes.
Yeah, I wish I was that good.
Right.
That's a good one. All right, last one. I'm going to put you on the clock because you got about 30 seconds, or Cecil for the hour clock here is going to send us a naughty letter. However, let's see when Philadelphia, plays a real defense. I don't think Hurts's passing is enough to get him to the number 1 quarterback over Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert and perhaps a few others. He's a great fantasy quarterback because of his legs, but he's an average at best NFL quarterback. If he has an inability to come from behind, that becomes a problem. The team will look to upgrade next offseason, and it could even happen within the season with Gardner Minshew hanging around.
Not super worried about Gardner Minshew hanging around. I think that they're going to play this out. And, the question of whether he can get all the way home to a quarterback 1 finish, I think if they're going to drop back and to throw 40 plus times a game, that is in his range of outcomes in a way that them running a run heavy offense is not.
Do you think we have a skewed viewpoint of what it takes for him to keep the job in the next year? Do you think, like, we think the Eagles have to win the division, win a playoff game, or like whatever high bar, like we keep going with this stuff and be like, if he doesn't do that NFL wise, Eagles are of course going to look for somebody else in the offseason. Do you think we have too much of an elevated status of what he has to achieve? If they win the division, Is that enough? I mean, they're already going to have a late first.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll never settle, right? To steal another phrase, I don't think they're going to settle at the position. But that said, right, I mean, if Jalen Hurts plays them to a way that is, I mean, it's the third year of his contract too. They're not obligated to pay him next year, right? Just because they have an extra pick does not mean they have to.
But this does feel like the optimal time to get someone behind him, does it not? I mean,
Right. Or maybe
fourth and final
up,
year of his contract in totality for rookies because he doesn't have a fifth-year option.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they have a couple of years of a tag control too, right? So I don't think that they're just going to settle. I think what they're going to be hesitant to do more than anything is to commit to him long term. But playing him another year isn't committing to him long term. Tagging him isn't a long term commitment. Where that goes awry is when you pay a quarterback that needs AJ Brown, that needs Goddard, that needs an elite offensive line, that needs elite players around him to be good.
And then you start paying him because
when
then
you
you're not going to be able
pay
to
that quarterback $45 million, all of a sudden all that other stuff goes away.
But once they tag him, the first time they tag him is when they will have to make some business decisions.
Correct.
On what do we think he can live without. And it's not going to be AJ Brown because AJ Brown probably at that point is still going to be integrally locked in.
He's going to look like a deal at that point, probably.
Yeah. So, but is it going to be the offensive line? Is it going to be the defense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be a myriad of things.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be fascinating to watch on how that plays out. All right. So in this episode, I think the enhancements, it went a little longer than usual, but I like the enhancements to the Dynasty Trading segment, looking at what does the market say. We haven't been completely wrong so far. That'll be interesting when that occurs. And again, we're going to get some saucy in-season trading here. So thanks so much for everyone that goes on the Shark Pool, the Dynasty completed trade part of the forum there. We talked about the sleeper stash of the week, mentioned a couple tight ends. We've got Tyler Conklin, Juwan Johnson for this week of just stash them on the back end. You got tight end questions. They are guys with utilization that make a lot of sense. And again, if you haven't tried out, you're listening to this show, haven't tried out the site, you want to go over to footballguys.com/dynasty winners. All right. Until next week, I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your dynasty.